Reemergence, a Clarice tale. In the land of Clarice, where legends were often dismissed as tavern gossip and dragons were relegated to bedtime stories, an unlikely group of adventurers found themselves entangled in fate's convoluted web. It all began with a servant, a map, and an old man with a fondness for mysterious satchels. Chapter 1. The Task, the Preservation, and Divine Guidance. Bob, the ever-dutiful, if reluctantly so, servant of Lord Ivel, had never fancied himself a hero. A tall halfling by most standards, and often mistaken for a short, wiry half-elf, Bob carried the practiced air of someone used to vanishing into crowds and slipping through coin-laden pockets unnoticed. His dark past as a pickpocket and back-alley courier for the less savory elements of Killingor's underbelly gave him a knack for knowing when to duck, when to smile, and when to keep his hands far away from things with consequences. These days, he worked slightly above board, but only slightly. So naturally, he found himself riding through the southeastern corner of Killingor, tasked with delivering a satchel to a remote village near the Yellow Wood. The job came with 20 platinum pieces, 10 up front, 10 upon completion, and an aggravating lack of detail. His instructions had been simple. Find an old man named Levi and assist him in an undisclosed task. Bob wasn't sure what was more alarming, the vagueness of the mission or the fact that the old man's name was Levi. The name sounded like trouble, and Bob had a sixth sense for that sort of thing. Levi, as it turned out, looked exactly like someone you'd expect to find at the center of trouble. He was ancient, truly ancient, with flowing silver hair, deeply lined features, and the wary gaze of a man who had seen too much and remembered more than was healthy. He awoke alone at a tavern table, staring into the swirling depths of a goblet filled with a suspiciously viscous purple liquid. His memory was in tatters, and whatever arcane knowledge once filled his mind had taken the day off. His existential pondering was interrupted by Bob plopping down across from him, his satchel slung casually across one shoulder, and his expression suggesting this wasn't his first bizarre errand. After an awkward exchange of pleasantries, mostly Bob's bemused skepticism and Levi's confused blinking, the satchel was opened. Inside were a map, a note, and a vial of ominous orange liquid that shimmered with potential catastrophe. Whatever the contents, they were apparently enough for Levi to straighten his back, adjust his robes, and declare with sudden purpose, "We must go to the Yellow Wood at once." Bob, who had long since learned that asking too many questions was a reliable path to unemployment, or worse, sighed, shouldered his satchel, and followed. There had better be an additional tip in this, he thought. Far to the north, Zal, a hulking, muscle-bound half-orc of truly staggering proportions, was not having a great time. Towering over most men, and even many monsters, Zal had once been a force of nature on the battlefield, a knight who had fought in the Great Northern War and left no shortage of broken weapons and stories in his wake. But now, his army lay in ruin, crushed at the Battle of Halazone, and Zal had come within a heartbeat of joining them in the afterlife. That heartbeat belonged to Roan, a human cleric whose quiet strength seemed to still the very air around him. Roan was a man of few words and deliberate motion, a devout servant of Saloon, whose calm presence carried the gravity of faith unshaken. He moved not with urgency, but with certainty, as though the moon itself whispered guidance into his thoughts. His intervention had pulled Zal back from death's threshold, not with fire and fury, but with light and grace. As is customary when someone literally saves your life, Zal pledged his sword to Roan, and by extension, to Saloon. And though Zal's frame was built for war, Somewhere behind his weathered face and steel-plated bulk lived a gentler heart, one drawn not just to vengeance, but to meaning. Roan's quiet resolve filled the vacuum left by Zal's shattered kingdom and haunted past. With nothing left to fight for but everything to prove, Zal followed Roan's visions southward, his heavy footsteps a steadfast echo beside the cleric's calm stride. And as if destiny were winding their path by silver thread, it too led them to the center of a large forest in the southern lands of the Middle Kingdom, known for its amber leaves. Meanwhile, in the Yellow Wood, Orst, a wood elf ranger with more sense than most merchants and the temperament of a tired predator, was begrudgingly guiding a caravan through a shortcut he had explicitly advised against. His warnings had been sharp and clipped. "Look, I'm telling you, the woods are crawling with goblins." But merchants, ever confident in their coin and numbers, dismissed him as overly cautious. What they failed to realize was that caution kept Ost alive, where bravado got others buried. As fate would have it, Ost's paranoia proved an excellent substitute for foresight. The ambush came swift and brutal. Goblins erupted from the trees in a cacophony of snarls and steel. Arrows rained, merchants screamed, horses bucked and bolted. Amidst the chaos, Ost moved with lethal grace, his arrows singing through the underbrush before most had even drawn a blade. He didn't bother yelling orders. Those who needed them wouldn't last long enough to follow them. When the dust settled and the bodies cooled, only two had survived: Orst, bloodied but unbowed, and a wide-eyed bard who had ducked behind a wine crate and prayed to any god with a spare moment. Alaric, a human bard of no small talent or volume, Alaric was the kind of man who always had a quip ready, a song half composed, and a habit of appearing exactly where trouble had just left. He emerged from the shattered wagon with his lute slung over his shoulder and a smirk that suggested either unfailing optimism or complete obliviousness. "Well," he said, brushing splinters from his coat, "that escalated quickly. On the bright side, I finally have material for my next tragic ballad." Ost gave him a once-over. "You can fight? Let's say I contribute in unconventional ways. Stay behind me." Despite his flair for dramatics, there was a steadiness beneath Alaric's antics. Ost noted the way his hands didn't shake as he adjusted the tuning pegs on his instrument, the way he kept glancing back at the wreckage, not for his belongings, but for signs of other survivors. Beneath the jokes and the jangling chords was a good heart, one that knew grief, even if it sang past it. The two made an unlikely pair, grizzled predator and silver-tongued performer. But survival breeds strange alliances. With no reason to linger among the dead, Ost followed the retreating goblin's tracks into the deeper wild. Alaric, unwilling to remain alone in a cursed forest and always one to chase the next story, fell in step beside him. Their pursuit led them through twisted groves and moss-choked hollows, deeper into the wilds than most dared travel. The goblins weren't just raiding, they were retreating, regrouping, organizing. Something wasn't right. And when things stopped being right in the Yellow Wood, there was only one place left to look. Their trail ended at the oldest living thing in the forest, a towering monolith of roots and bark, whispered of in cautionary tales and old songs. The first to arrive at the heart tree was Ost and Alaric. Ost was the one who noticed it. Gnarled roots at the base of the heart tree twisted unnaturally apart to reveal something ancient, a stone stair, descending into the dark. As he peered into the void, rustling drew his attention away. As fate would have it, the other four adventurers arrived at the heart tree at the same time. All six there for slightly different reasons, Bob and Levi, following the mysterious map and vague instructions given to them by Lord Avell, had been trudging through the yellow wood for a full day with little more to go on than a vague "look for the big tree" directive and the promise of a reward upon return. Orst and Alaric had tracked a series of goblin raids back to this region, each attack closer, more brutal, more coordinated. Zal and Rowan, following divine guidance, were drawn to the heart tree by dreams and signs only the cleric could interpret. At first, no one spoke. There was only the rustle of leaves and the hum of distant insects. 6 strangers standing beneath a colossal, ancient tree, all watching each other with narrowed eyes and readied hands. It was Roan who broke the silence. The human cleric's voice was calm, soft but clear. "This place has been touched by something unnatural. Selune urges me forward. Something waits here. Something dark." Zal, towering over everyone present, crossed his arms and gave a single nod. "Then I go where you go, Roan. If it's dangerous, I'm the blade between you and it." Ost nodded, pulling the map rubbing from his pouch. "This is where the trails converge, and if something here is stirring them up, I'd rather meet it now than wait for it to come knocking." Alaric, staring back at the woods with trepidation, turned and spoke to the group. "I'm always in need of material for a song," he claimed as he stepped closer to Ost. Levi had been staring at the tree, muttering about moss and bark and arcane patterns only he could see. "I was sent to investigate," he said suddenly, waving the map. "Didn't say I had to like it, but there's a reward for whatever's down there. I'm not about to walk away from a good mystery, and less so from payment." Bob adjusted his collar and looked nervously at the massive half-orc, the silent druid, and the elf who looked like he'd shoot a bird if it landed wrong. "This seems like a bad idea to me. Walking into tree holes with strangers never ends well." Before anyone could reply, the goblins attacked. What followed was a chaotic, impromptu battle. Spells lit the canopy, arrows flew, blades sang. Bob mostly tried not to get stabbed. Zal stood like a fortress, cleaving through goblin ranks with sheer brute force. Ost's mind worked like clockwork, every shot landing where it would do the most damage. Levi laughed far too much as he flung fire and frost, basking in his own cleverness. Roan, calm as a moonlit pond, moved where the battle needed him most, shielding, healing, and striking with divine purpose. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and the goblin bodies lay still, taking in the scene, Bob broke the silence. "Perhaps I was a bit hasty. I mean, safety in numbers, right?" The 6 gathered around the hidden entrance, the silence thick with implication. "Well," Ost muttered, peering into the black void below. "Dungeon time."